Organizations depend on reports to make a range of business and operational decisions, such as how to reduce operational expenses or how to improve personnel allocation and operational efficiency. Organizations also use information in reports to make such decisions as whether to proceed with or suspend a project, whether to launch a new product and service, and how to localize a product and service to the local consumer and client needs.
Reports differ in length, purpose, and delivery format. They can be as simple as a checklist or form, a short email message, a 2-page document on the status of a project, a 50-page analysis of a problem and recommendations, or a 100-page financial report with graphs and charts. They can range from informal email briefs to the project team leader or supervisor, to very formal annual reports for investors and other stakeholders. In other words, the context, reader, and purpose of the report affect the content, length, structure, formality, and delivery mode of the report. In this video, we are going to look at 2 ways to write common short reports at work.
Before we start writing, we need to consider 2 questions. What is the purpose of the report? What is the reader's likely reaction to the report? The answers will help us decide what to include in the report and how to structure the report.
What is the purpose of the report? Are we writing a report to update someone on the progress of our work? To document an activity or event, such as a work trip? To document an incident or accident? To record some information, such as expenses incurred? Or decisions made at a meeting? These reports provide only information. No analysis is expected.
These are examples of informative reports. Who are the readers of the report? Informative reports merely deliver information, so the readers are not expected to be negatively affected by the information. There is usually no resistance to the information and no need for us to persuade them. Therefore, these reports tend to be written using the direct approach. This means that these reports contain an introduction that provides brief background information and announces the purpose of the report, the main section that provides the key information required in the report, and a brief conclusion.
Some of these informative reports could be just forms that we fill out, such as an incident report or a travel expense report. Others may follow a commonly used template, such as the minutes of meetings or a progress report. Informative reports tend to be short, most likely under 10 pages in length. They may be presented as an email attachment or, if they're very short, in the body of an email itself.
But what if we're writing a report to present the impact of certain company decisions, or to propose a change, or to present the results of a study? These reports involve some sort of analysis. This means we'll need to write an analytical report. Analytical reports can be direct or indirect, depending on the context and the reader. If the reader is familiar with the context of the report and is likely to agree with the conclusions in the report, if the reader does not need much persuasion and is expected to respond neutrally or positively to our recommendations and conclusions, then we may most likely write a direct analytical report. This means that we start with an introduction or background or problem statement, then write the conclusions or recommendations, followed by the reasons, findings, or data that support the conclusion or recommendations. But if the reader is not familiar with the context and topic of the report, then he or she probably needs to be convinced that the topic and recommendations are worthy of his or her time. Or if the reader is likely to be resistant or to react negatively to the report's conclusions and recommendations, then we need to take the time to help the reader understand the situation and the logic behind our reasoning before he or she is ready to be convinced by our conclusions and consider our recommendations. In this case, we need to write an indirect analytical report. This means that we need to first explain why we are writing the report. This may include a background, a problem statement, and specific objectives. Where relevant, we could also explain how we went about investigating the problem. Then we present the facts or reasons, followed by an analysis or interpretation of these facts and reasons and a discussion of their implications for the reader. And finally, we state our recommendations and conclusions.
Analytical reports can range from 1 page to any length, depending on the content of the report. They may be presented in the body of an email if they're short, under 3 paragraphs, or as an email attachment, or even as an ebook.
Okay, let's check if you've been following us.
Ruben is the branch manager for Chestnut Hypermarket. Ruben has noticed that these days, the checkout lines seem to be much longer on weekday mornings. Previously, it was the evenings that tended to be more crowded. Some customers have complained about the long queues and insufficient checkout counters. Ruben asks Mr. Ton, the morning manager, to track the number of customers at each cashier lane for the next 2 weeks, give him a report of the trend in the last 3 months. What are the main sections in Mr. Ton's report?
The answer is B. Ruben has asked for only the trend in the last 3 months. This means that Mr. Ton is merely required to provide an informative report, not an analytical one.
Salim is considering a permanent shift to remote working for his employees. He wants to know his employees' reaction to such a move, whether it will eventually cause a loss in productivity, and whether it will incur higher costs later. He asks Natalie, his operations manager, to look into the matter and give him a report at the end of the month. Natalie conducts her research and finds that the staff are supportive of the change. Productivity during the circuit breaker when everyone had to work from home had indeed increased, and operational costs will be much reduced. What are the main sections in Natalie's report?
The answer is C. Natalie needs to write an analytical report. Since the results support Salim's intention for permanent remote working, Natalie can use a direct approach. However, if Natalie's research produces a conclusion that does not support Salim's stance, then Natalie would need to write an indirect analytical report.
Scan this QR code for sample reports. What about report writing style? How formal should our reports be? Find out in this infographic.